Hi everybody, I'm Rob Raybon, and this is my Skyline, and this is my really messy garage. Today we're going to clean up and put on some UnderGlow. This UnderGlow is going to be made by Type S. They're one of the main sponsors for Formula D this year, and I think it looks really awesome, so I figured why not put it on the Skyline. I've heard nothing but good things about these lights. I think they're going to turn out pretty awesome. Let's clean up a little bit. I had the welder out because we welded the diff. The exhaust had to be cut off to get to the rear diff and drop that and everything. So we still got to fix the exhaust, but we're not going to worry about that today. We're just going to concentrate on lights and maybe change the wheels out to the BBSs just so it looks pretty cool for thumbnails and for B-roll. So let's get started. So if you're doing a whole car, you're going to want to get two of these 72-inch kits. 72 inches is 6 feet. If you have a limo or something really big, you're going to want maybe a third kit, but this should be good enough for your average vehicle. As you can see, GTR, it's fine for that. This packaging is pretty awesome. It's got a nice Velcro door for a display, and you see you get your two 36-inch multicolor super bright LED strips. You get a waterproof smart hub, 12-volt plug-in and 12-volt hardware, and also an audio sensor. So these are audio sensitive, which is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and crack this thing open. Also has a little hanger if you want to display this in a store or something. So this looks like a lot of wiring, but it's actually not that bad, trust me. This is your 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter. If you want to wire this thing up super simple, you just plug this into your cigarette lighter. It has this attachment right here, so you can just plug your lights in, and then it also has an on-off switch on the adapter, which is really thoughtful because in certain places you really don't want to draw attention to your vehicle, and this might be illegal to drive on the street in certain states. This is going to be an extension cable for your power. This is going to be a microphone. This is your standard, I guess it's a 3.5 millimeter input. So basically this microphone is going to pick up audio from whatever music you got playing, and then the lights are going to do their little dance. This also comes with a fuse holder, so when you're wiring this thing up hardwired, you can go ahead and throw a fuse in. You should fuse pretty much any connection on anything that you wire into your car. It even comes with a fuse inside of it. This is a 3 amp fuse. These don't eat up a lot of power. 3 amps is pretty low. So really all in all, it's hard for you to burn your car down with LED lights. And the fuse holder is already attached to a little harness of its own, which is also thoughtful. And then this is your connector for the UnderGlow. So this is going to be your brain for the UnderGlow. This connector is going to be for your power. And then you can also throw your audio input into this female connector right here. It also comes with some 3M sticky stuff and a bunch of little clamps that you can use to support your UnderGlow, which is also really handy. Comes with little screws also if you want to just screw it in with these little brackets. Comes with some paperwork, which we probably won't read because I'm hard-headed. Also comes with a little warranty thing, so if you want to register this product, you can get a 1-year extended warranty, which is awesome because you never know, shit happens. The power cable on the module is really long, so there's a lot of different options of where you can put this. So that's pretty much what you got. I know I just made a mess of it, but we're gonna go ahead and sort all this out and install it on the vehicle. It'll be a quick, easy install. Let's get to it. One of the first steps is going to be to jack the car up. Because the Skyline has some really low subframe points, can't really jack it up as it sits right now, so we're going to pull the front bumper off just to jack it up at a K-member. It's a lot easier that way. With your car, if it's dirt nasty low, you might have an issue like this. You might want to drive it on like some 2x4s or something, and then you can get a jack under it. But it's just easier on this one to take the bumper off. And be sure to use jack stands also, safety first, while doing this install. Now that we have the car on jack stands and it's nice and safe and secure, we can go ahead and start doing the install. We're gonna go ahead and wire up the controller and then mount all the lights underneath of the vehicle. Step one, if your battery is under the hood, is to pop your hood. If you have the battery in the trunk, then you can do this in the trunk, but ours is under the hood, like pretty much 90% of vehicles. This is a Skyline, which is of course JDM, which means it has a little JDM battery. This battery is really tiny. I don't know what the amp rating is for this thing, but it's pretty small. And it actually died dies if you don't start the car for a while. But there's nothing special about this battery. It's still 12 volts. All we got to do is take our wires that come with the kit and mount them directly to the terminals. There's a few different ways to wire up this kit. One way is to take it directly to your cigarette lighter that's inside the car, but I don't want to keep our cigarette lighter clogged up. You can buy like an expansion port where you have more than one cigarette lighter, but we're going to keep this on the car for a while, so we're going to go with the direct wire method. The kit comes with these terminals already crimped on, so it's pretty easy to install. You just throw these under the battery terminal bolts and you're good to go. On the Skyline and pretty much any other vehicle, it's just going to be a 10 millimeter. Remember, righty tighty, lefty loosey. Because these terminals are slotted, they pop right on. You don't have to worry about adding a nut or anything or taking the nut completely off the terminals. You just pop these right in and it's good to go. Then you got a quick connect that's going to connect to the controller harness. What I recommend doing with any kind of wiring on any kind of vehicle is pull the fuse while you're doing the wiring, just because once this fuse is pulled, this hot wire going to this little quick connect is never going to be hot. Just in case you pinch a wire somewhere or you drag across something, you don't have to worry about buying another fuse. So we're just going to go ahead and pop these in and get back to the rest of the wiring. So real quick, and not really a necessary step, but just something that makes it a little bit easier, is to take all the wheels off. So when you're routing everything around, you don't have to worry about like hugging around the wheels and everything, especially if your wheels and tires are dirty like these. Another reason I'm taking the wheels off is because I want to put the BBSs on. They're a little more photogenic than these other generic ass wheels, and I really want the thumbnails to look good for this video, and also for the B-roll to look really good. So let's go ahead and take these off real quick. Bald these bastards are. The plan is going to be to mount one of the controllers near the battery, just because it's a little more convenient to have it under the hood, be nice and accessible. So what we're going to do is have our controller kind of around here, maybe tuck it inside by the battery, not too close to the radiator. You don't want this thing melting or anything. So then this whip's going to be long enough to put us to the front end, and we're going to stick our strip to the front mount. I've never removed this front mount, so I don't plan on taking it off anytime soon. So we're going to stick it right to the bottom of the front mount. It should be nice and visible there. Then we're going to use one of our extensions and come around the side and then hit this side skirt. So that'll be one kit. Our second kit, we're gonna go ahead and mount in the trunk. So for this, we are gonna have to run a separate power wire, and then we're gonna splice our power wire directly to the control power. We're gonna go ahead and use the harness attachment that has the two little prongs on it. We're gonna cut those off and butt splice some power wires just on the hot wire. I did have a hot wire run into the trunk already, but I ripped it out because I thought it was gonna sell the car. Once we have that positive wire going towards the back, we can mount our controller right in the trunk. Once it's in the trunk, we can mount this strip for the back of the car underneath the bumper. Then we're gonna use one of these extensions, go through the side of the car, and then for this side skirt, we're gonna go ahead and mount that second strip, and that'll give us complete coverage over the car. So let's go ahead and get started with that. We're gonna go ahead and keep the battery disconnected for a while and go ahead and route our first strip through the radiator support. Make sure that you don't hit anything that's sharp or something that's gonna be really hot. There's a lot of cooling lines and everything that goes through here, but there's also a lot of wiring that goes through for the headlights and whatnot. I also have an oil cooler that runs through on this side, so you also want to keep it away from those oil cooler lines because they can get pretty hot. We're going to try to keep it as close to the headlight harness as possible and then go from there. Whenever I do any kind of wiring install, I leave everything loose and then I go back and tie wrap it later. You want to make sure that everything's tie wrapped so it doesn't wiggle around too much and actually rub the insulation off or cut the wire completely. You can tie wrap as you go, but if you decided to reroute something or if something's not working right and you need to diagnose the issue, you got to cut all your tie wraps loose, and then you're wasting tie wraps. And tie wraps are a precious commodity around these parts. Any kind of car, really, you got to make sure you have tie wraps. I mean, tie wraps hold my bumper on. But anyway, When routing your LED strips, you want to make sure that they're pretty much centered as possible. You don't want to have a bunch on one side or the other. It's just going to look sloppy. So try to make these as centered as possible. You want to clean off any kind of panel that you're sticking to with some isopropyl alcohol. You can also use different degreasers. Make sure it's dry after you wipe it down. But I think we're going to use acetone just because I have a lot of acetone laying around. If you use acetone, make sure that you use gloves because it is really harmful to your skin. As you can see, there's our first strip. The adhesive on the strips seems to be pretty good quality. Seems to be sticking really well. So this should be really nice. Let's go to the side panel now. When plugging in the extension cables, make sure that your arrow is facing the right way. There's a little arrow on the extension, and then there's an arrow on the LED strip signifying that you want that prong to go in that side of the harness, which is pretty simple. If you miss that step, you're gonna have some lighting issues. Then the other side of the extension is just going to plug into our first strip. And again, make sure that the arrow is facing the right way on that. When you route the extension cables, make sure you don't route them around any kind of suspension pieces because they'll get pinched and that'll make your lights go out. Just watch out for any kind of control arms and your sway bars and your shocks. With this car, we're going to try to mount it as close as possible to this channel because this lip on the subframe is going to kind of protect it if there ever was an extreme angle situation, and it should be nice and tight and hidden. For our side strip, normally you want to attach to something that's as smooth as possible. There's a lot of undercoating under this car. Could do it on our side ground effects or whatever you want to call them, but I really want to keep it close to the inside of the subframe. So we're going to go ahead and clean it up as much as possible and try to attach it around here. That'll be out of the way, and we're going to use the front door as kind of a benchmark also as to where the strip is going to start. That way on the other side we know where to start, or actually that's going to be where we finish. So we're going to go ahead and clean this up as much as possible, let it dry, and then stick this to it. And it should stick. I think it will. Since we're going to put the second controller in the trunk, we still got to run a power wire for that, by the way. We're going to go ahead and put our lights through this grommet here. These are the wires for our backup alarm. I have a JDM backup alarm on this car that's pretty awesome. If you haven't checked out that video, maybe check that one out too, because that's a pretty neat thing. So we're going to go ahead and slide our LED strip through the grommet, and then we're going to route it down the back of the car. On the back of the vehicle, big thing is to make sure that you're not close to the exhaust because that will melt these. On this car, the exhaust is off currently because of things, but the tailpipe is normally in this section. So we're going to take the LED and probably mount it right to the fuel tank. I know electricity and fuel doesn't seem like a good idea, but this is all isolated and insulated and everything. Really, it's more than safe. And everything has a fuse on it also, so if anything does spark, it's immediately going to pop the fuse and you're going to be fine. So don't be scared. You can mount this to a fuel tank if you really want it. Or if you're really paranoid and scared, just mount it to the bottom side of the bumper, and that's more than fine too. The controller, we're probably going to stick that maybe here. So just leave yourself enough room to where this thing stays put inside the trunk. Most of the install time is going to be planning where you're actually going to put the lights. It's actually a really quick install. You just got to find a good path. The next wire extension that we ran this kind of above the gas tank, and then we're going to take it pretty high up, kind of on where the frame of the car is going to be and the subframe attaches. I have some sticky pads that you can tie wrap to. They're called sticky backs. I'll put a link in the description below for those if you want to buy some of those on Amazon. We're going to use those to stick the wire up and keep it protected and out of the way. Again, make sure nothing's near any moving parts. There's a spot here that's kind of close to the lower control arm that we can squeeze this kind of behind and it'll be safe. Once that's all up and protected, we're going to put it right on the bottom of the frame, kind of like we did on the other side, except on the driver's side now. These are the sticky backs. These just stick wherever you want, and you can throw a tie wrap right through the center of the channel, and it lets you tie wires up pretty much wherever you want. Key to getting these to stick well is to prep your surface. So we're gonna go ahead and take some alcohol and prep where we're gonna stick it. So for powering up the rear controller, what you're gonna want to do is get yourself some wire. We had some number 12 laying around. Number 12 is a little heavy for this. 14 will work just fine. Usually you want to use automotive wire. You can use copper clad aluminum or whatever, but I recommend copper. And we're just gonna take a hot back here, and then our negative we can get from the trunk. Those trunks are gonna have a bunch of negative points for your taillights and backup lights and stuff. And all your negative is a chassis ground. So we got one right here, so we're just gonna do this for a negative, but we gotta get that hot wire back here to power up the hot side. Because this car is gutted, it's extra easy to just run through the factory channel and connect to the factory harness. Your car probably has a bunch of interior and stuff, so you might need to get the interior out of the way to run another hot. Most cars don't have a constant hot in the rear. BMWs have the battery in the rear, so if you have a BMW or something, your battery's gonna be in the trunk anyway, so this won't be a big deal. Most cars will have a chase that runs through the firewall and into the fender well. This car is no exception. There's a path right there, goes to the fender right there, and then goes into the car from there. So as long as you're in those grommets and everything, they're protected by rubber and plastic and stuff. You can tie right to the factory harness. Some cars you're gonna have to remove your fender liner. I don't have any fender liners on any of my cars because they're all kind of low. This one was already kind of ripped apart before I got it. So somebody in Japan, I guess once upon a time, took it all apart and took the fender liners out. But yeah, that's gonna be our path. Then inside the car, we're gonna go under the dash, kind of back behind the fuse box. And then along with the factory wiring, we're just gonna go through, attach it to that. So with our splices in the trunk, we're gonna take the hardwire kit, which is the one with the two like circular little thingies on it. So we're gonna take this and we're gonna go ahead and cut the prong off of the red one. Strip that back a little bit. Throw a butt splice on it. These are your typical butt splices that you can find pretty much anywhere. I'll put a link in the description if you want to buy some off of Amazon though. I bought a big kit of these. I used to just steal them from work, but I actually bought some recently. And then once one side of that is made up, take your feed that you took to the battery. Go ahead and make a fresh cut on that one. About 3/8 of an inch. Go ahead and throw that in your butt splice. This wire is a little thick for blue ones. Blue ones are like kind of your medium gauge butt splices. You can also do solder and shrink wrap with these, but because pretty much everything on this car is temporary, we swap it out a lot. We're just gonna do butt splices for this. So put your wires in there, go ahead and crimp it up. This is a really crappy crimp tool, by the way. It's just one that I've had laying around for years and years. My good ones at work. Whenever I'm using butt splices, I have a habit of just taping it up also, just in case. Good crimp tool is not gonna destroy your insulation on the butt splice, but I usually just throw a little bit of tape around there anyway, just for some added protection, just so no wetness gets in there too, you know. And use a decent quality electrical tape too. Buy some actual 3M like the 1710 Flex. You don't need like the Super 33 or anything, just a decent roll of tape. Make sure you got your fuse in here. So then for your negative or your ground, whatever you would like to call it that particular day, we're gonna go ahead and put that on the factory chassis ground that's right here. And that should be 10 millimeter on this car. It's probably 10 millimeter on your car too. Seems like every car is metric now. I'll make sure that this is nice and tight. If any of your grounds are loose, they can do some pretty weird stuff to the rest of your electrical equipment. So make sure that it's clean, tight. Yeah. So once that's made up, you can go ahead and plug in your Type S controller / box. Probably gonna have some slack left over, no big deal. I'm just gonna go ahead and plug this in. So all this slack, you want to tidy this up a bit. Make sure all your connections are pretty solid. You got tie wraps everywhere on this car. You want to put this in kind of a convenient spot. So we're probably going to take the adhesive that comes with this and stick it right here. And here's your adhesive 3M pad. Just go ahead and stick this to the controller, and then you can stick your controller wherever you want. Go ahead and put it right over top of this right here. Wrap is everything. Alright. Let's go ahead and tidy up the rest of this harness. Now when you're cutting tie wraps, big rule of thumb with the electrical industry is don't cut them. You actually want to twist them off with some linements. But we have so many damn tie wraps on this car right now. I'm gonna go ahead and cut them. They make precision cutters for cutting tie wraps. I have a pair, I don't know where those are. So if you don't have those precision cutters and you have a nice pair of strippers, my tip is to pull these and actually cut them on the side. And if you cut them on the side as you're pulling them, you usually have a pretty flush cut and it won't cut you. So all the ones in the trunk, we're gonna go ahead and do that. Also, when you're cutting tie wrap ends, make sure you don't cut your wire. It seems obvious, but be careful because I've done it. And also don't get your fingers stuck in there, like, because that'll cut the tip of your finger off. So now that we have everything landed in the rear and everything's solid, we're gonna land our hot wire that we had running through the inside of the car. For this, I do recommend any kind of feed that you're putting inside of a car, put a separate fuse. This is a simple add a fuse. I had this laying around. As you can see, it's already butt spliced and taped up and everything, and the fuse is already in. It's already got a Skyline on there too. This is a round type. That does mean that you gotta take the nut completely off of your positive terminal. I'm gonna tidy up the front controller a little bit, and then we can actually light up the lights finally. If you're still here, I really appreciate you watching this video. It's gonna be a cool montage in a couple minutes. As soon as I'm done hooking this up right here. Go ahead and take your second hardwire terminal. You can go ahead and put your fuse in now if you really, really want. We're gonna go ahead, plug this in, tie up the slack, and kind of hide it on the front radiator support, kind of with the headlight harness. It seems like a nice safe spot for it. And again, you want to put your controller somewhere where it's kind of accessible. Right now, it's going to be on the battery pretty much. I might go ahead and just stick it there. Now we're just going to put some tie wraps on this just to get all the slack up. So we're gonna go ahead and put the wheels on, do a bunch of B-roll and beauty shots and all that stuff. So let's do that right now. We're gonna try out the music function on the app. To do that, you just go to the app, pick your controller. If you want to use music on both controllers, you gotta actually arm both and have two mics. Right now, we're just gonna do it on the rear controller just to show you guys what it looks like. So we'll just go to music, pick a color, let's pick purple. And now it should be triggered by music. So yeah, let's see what happens. So now the interior is really boring. So the next video, we're going to do the Type S interior kit, which should be pretty awesome. It's going to accent this crappy interior pretty nicely. All right, stay tuned for that. Please like, please subscribe, and have a fantastic day. Oh, it's cold outside.